The consistent choices we make over time have a greater impact on the long-term consequences of our lives than our starting or current conditions. And the way that we use gratitude and goal setting in particular with how we channel our focus helps us make better choices and have greater impact and fulfillment. Welcome to the Unleashing Leaders podcast, where we work with willing leaders to accelerate the changes you seek. We'll learn from the experiences of different leaders facing real challenges and distill practical, purposeful steps to apply in your context. I'm Lee Scott, your curious co-pilot. Together, let's make positive changes for our companies and communities. Welcome back to the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Great to have you here. It is December 2023. We are wrapping up our year in the season of gratitude and looking to transition with fresh eyes towards the future with our goals for 2024. After this podcast, I'm literally going to go off and continue to work on revising our forecast projections and our goals for both our company and on behalf of a couple of clients that we're working with right now. So definitely in the mode in the season. But in this podcast, we want to focus on a powerful perspective on how we can more effectively use gratitude and goal setting to optimize our impact and our level of fulfillment. We all know those are two very powerful things. And we know when we do them, we tend to get better results, but there's a particular way in how we can do it. And there's been a lot of clues given to us over the years, but we often forget those in the moment of stress and uncertainty and challenge. So we want to zoom in on that a little bit today. I was inspired by a series of 4 coaching conversations that I had with 4 completely unrelated leaders in 3 different industries, a couple private, a couple public, where these leaders are amazing and they are talented, highly skilled, intelligent, committed, and they are in incredibly complex and challenging circumstances. The parachuting recently or in the last year, they've joined some scenario that has in some cases been many years or even decades in the making of a crisis or a challenge that they're now being tasked to solve with it. And I'm talking things that have been court mandated, legislative mandated, contractually mandated. And these were conditions and expectations imposed by other parties that were far distant from the actual challenging situation. But these leaders still chose to jump into it and make a go of it. And understandably so, all of them are feeling overwhelmed and anxious, and they're frustrated and they're tired, given the magnitude of the challenge that they're up against. But as I was coaching them on a variety of different things, this pattern across all 4 of these leaders emerged where there was this clue where they said, I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm not effective. I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like this just isn't fair and there's no way I can make it. And that might be legitimate. I mean, I'm not saying those conditions aren't ridiculously unreasonable, but the pattern with which each one of those came out with it made me kind of pause and reflect. I'm like, I'm hearing this from a lot of leaders right now. What's going on? And the interesting thing too is I happen to know each of these leaders. In a couple cases, it's a CEO, in a few cases, director of very large public agencies. And I know their leaders, and I know for a fact that their leaders are incredibly grateful for the leaders that I'm telling you about here. They are treasured, they are appreciated, they are essential to any chance of success that they would have with these issues that they have them working on. And they know they would be completely hosed without them, right? So they are incredibly grateful. And so it's not the leader who's just being a bad leader and just beating these people up, making them feel terrible. There's something else going on there. So I asked a little more closely to say, hey, what are you comparing? What 2 things are you comparing to come to the conclusion that you're failing and you're not good enough? And in all cases, what I found out was that they were comparing their current conditions, their current reality, with either expectations and goals that were imposed on them, or in 2 cases, they were comparing them to a mythical, perfect parallel universe that never existed. They're comparing their performance to perfect and feeling terrible. And I'm talking conditions that have never existed, not only on those projects, but probably never in the history of the world. Having the right resources, with the right market conditions, with the right leadership support, with the right tools and the right level of skills. Like, they don't have any of those things. I mean, they're dealing with glorified dumpster fires in some cases, but yet they're comparing their performance as if all of those conditions existed, which don't. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, leader, like, please give yourself a break here. And so as I dug into it a little bit more, I was kind of unwound, and here's where we landed. The first thing is, again, remembering that the choices that we consistently make over time have a greater impact on our long-term consequences than our starting or current conditions. All right. And so that's a belief that we have that's borne out by a tremendous amount of evidence. But I started looking at too, okay, what choices are these leaders making? And one of the choices that we all have as leaders in any given point in time is what state are we operating in? And I'm not talking about the state you reside, right? I'm not talking about like Illinois versus Idaho or India, right? I'm talking about the emotional or energetic state that you're operating from when you're making decisions. Now, this is something I learned from Tony Robbins. I mean, it's just he bakes this into everything that he does. And we all know intuitively that when you're in a very low energy state and you're cutting yourself off from that energy, then you don't have access to your own power, the resources around you, the wisdom and the opportunities that are around you. You'll be short, you'll cut off other folks. You won't be in the most powerful, mindful, present place that you could be. And when you're in a really powerful state, when you're saying, hey, I'm going to embrace curiosity and courage and compassion or whatever those things are that are appropriate for that moment, well, then you have more access to all those abundant resources and energy around you. Another thing I learned from Tony Robbins was there's three ways that you can influence and control your state. And those three pathways are your physiology, right? If you're slumped over and you're scrunched up in the fetal position and just hanging your head, obviously you're going to be in a lower energy state, not as capable, versus if your fists are on the backs of hips and your shoulders are up tight and you're breathing deep and you're looking out and holding your head up high, that superhero pose, right? You're going to put yourself in a different state. So your physiology is one way of accessing it. The other way that we have access to it is our phraseology. Like, what story are we telling? What words are we using? Are we saying, hey, oh my gosh, my life sucks. This is terrible. It's not fair. I'm a victim. They're meaning. Well, if you dwell on that long enough, and again, there might be evidence to support it. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying if that's your focus, then and your story, then you're going to have challenges. Versus if your story and the words are like, hey, this is a challenging situation, but I'm a hero worthy of those challenges. And so the things that we say and the way we talk to ourselves and the way we talk to others externally can affect our state. And then the last one is our focus, right? And that's where we're focused in our mind's eye, what we're focusing on in the current situation. So, you're at a holiday party, you could focus on the couple that's squabbling over there and going at it and the kid over there that's being rude. Or you could focus on a person or a couple of folks, right, who are more positive and are really sharing their gratitude and emphasizing the gifts and the appreciation, and maybe some kids that are doing something really delightful and funny and cute. What you choose to focus on at that holiday party can affect whether or not you walk away from that being in a positive, powerful state or feeling more depressed about your life than ever. Because where your attention goes, energy flows. And so that's the focus part. So all three of those give you access to getting your state to match whatever energy you need access to for those current conditions. And that then is a choice to make in and of itself, and will make you make better choices along from that and have a longer term impact on your consequences. And I'm not saying your conditions are divorced entirely from your consequences. We're just saying they're not exclusively dependent on them. So when you're making that choice, though, to manage your focus, started to realize with these leader examples that we were talking about that they were focusing in peculiar ways that was causing them to leak their energy all over the place, right? And then they didn't have what they needed from their gratitude and the goal setting to achieve the results that they were seeking. So let's talk about this. I mean, we know, again, gratitude and goal setting, super important, but the normal typical way that we look at those is we say, okay, well, there's the past, there's the present, and then there's the future, right? And there's this linear timeline, and it's like, train tracks in a rail moving on from left to right. And we would say that gratitude is comparing the past to the present. When I look at my past and I look at my present, I'm like, I'm grateful for all the things and all the people and all the experiences and all the wisdom gained, which is called learnings from past mistakes, right? I can be grateful for those things. And that's a logical, reasonable place to look. And you can find a lot to be grateful there. And then we would compare the present to the future, right? And that's our goals, right? It's like, hey, I'm here now. Well, this is where I want to get. So here's my goals, right? And here's my strategies and objectives and results and all those other fun things to get us there. And again, those aren't bad, but that's kind of like a amateur, low-level way to do it. And they're risky and can create these traps. In the case of these leaders, their source of gratitude, you might be in a situation where things are actually worse right now. Like, it has gotten worse. And sometimes things do get worse before they get better. And sometimes you just get worse and they just get worse. I mean, we've had really close family members pass away this last year. We've had folks dealing with health challenges that they didn't deserve. They live good lives. They've got stuff that, just happens to them. Maybe it's economic, maybe it's financial, maybe it's political, maybe it's wars going on in the world. There is bad stuff happening. And so if you're like, oh, just be grateful. And it's like, no, this sucks legitimately. And so comparing the past to the present can be challenging to find a source of gratitude in that moment. I mean, you can find one there, but you got to dig through some trash to get there. So that's not the most powerful area to focus on when you're trying to be grateful. And then similarly with our goals, right? If you're just like, okay, well, hey, I'm setting my goals based on where we are, right? This year we had so much in revenue, and then we're going to look forward and have 10% more. Or this year I weigh this much and I want to lose 10%. Or this year I learned these skills and I want to get 10% better at it. So if we anchor, our future goals based on past results, what we did last year, the year before that, or we anchor it even on just where we are now, we're really inheriting and dragging along a lot of limiting assumptions with that. So let's unpack this just a bit more here. You know, when we are trying to be grateful, if we're comparing it to the past, or worse, we're comparing it to this mythical, perfect parallel universe, then we're going to say things like, well, we should have been here, right? Or we could have been here if the conditions were better or different. And we're really setting ourselves up for a mental trap about where we are that can cause us to beat ourselves up, even if nobody else is. And then we're going to be leaking our energy all over the place. Conversely, like I said, if we set our goals, based on the past to predict the future, or based on some perfect ideal, this blue sky, if there were no limits and you had a BHAG and all this other great stuff, BHAG being big, hairy, audacious goals, it's like that could be a powerful exercise. But if we're using that as our only means, then we're going to create a situation where we might be overwhelmed and feeling neurotic and stressed out. So how do we reconcile these two? We know they're good tools. Being grateful, we know when you focus on gratitude, you can change your state and get out of frustration, anger, or whatnot. We know that when you have goals that can motivate you and move you forward in powerful ways. But if we use the wrong comparisons for those two things, we get ourselves in trouble. When expectations are greater reality, then we've got some stress. Maybe we're sad, maybe we're mad, wish things were different, but that can also be a source of motivation. When the reality is greater than our expectations, well, yeah, I might be really glad and happy and joyful about that, but then maybe that saps our motivation, because then why do we need to, keep pressing on if things are even better than we expected? And then in the economic circles, we're beating companies up. It's like, they didn't meet their expectations and they just trash their stock price. And it's like, oh, they exceeded expectations. And then the stock prices goes through the roof. And it's like, but expectations were generated at a time with limited information and conditions that weren't known, and in some parallel universe that never even ended up coming to pass. So it's really, it's what we got to do because we don't really have much else, but it's a poor substitute. So what's the alternative? With gratitude, this season, when you're reflecting and trying to leverage gratitude as your focus to get yourself in a state of contentment and happiness and joyful, we can say, all right, rather than comparing the past to the present and rather than carrying the perfect to the present, what could we do to compare where we are to the null alternative parallel universe, to what alternative parallel universe there would have been had we not been here, had somebody in our role not been stepping into it, had we not taken the risk, had we not learned from the failures, had we not given it what we did. And we've seen stories of this all over the place. A Wonderful Life, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, Back to the Future, all the Marvel multiverse. They're all talking about these parallel universes that are running. And so to take a moment, reflect, and I did that with these leaders, like, you're beating yourself up for how things are versus how they shoulda, oughta, coulda, woulda. What if you hadn't been here? What would this organization be like? How would this problem be if you weren't there doing what you're doing? What learnings would you not have now if you had not taken that risk and failed maybe along the way? How would that impair your ability to really be prepared for the next hurdle? And when we looked at that, every one of those leaders were like, well, yeah, it's a heck of a lot better than it would have been. And I'm like, okay, well, then let's use that as our basis for source of gratitude. Like, what would the world be if you weren't showing up as the imperfect parent that you are? What if you were the leader that had your bad days and made your bad calls, but were there coming back day after day, consistently trying to make a difference? Right. And so something I learned with my martial arts many years ago is that one of my early senseis would say, hey, I'm happy with my karate, but I'm not satisfied. Right. I'm content with my progress, but it's not complete. And we're focusing on evaluating our measure of our contribution and what we're grateful for on the progress, not comparing it to perfection. Right. Now, my youngest daughter she's almost 11, just got her first degree black belt, super excited. It's a big goal that she set for herself. She's been going after it. As parents, we've been Ubering her there to support it. But that's not it. Like, that's not done. Like, really, the black belt is when you begin becoming a true student of the martial arts. I'm working on my third degree. We got to test together where I'm up there doing a midterm and she was getting her belt. And it's like this, I'm obviously much older than 11 and I'm still working on it. I'm happy, but I'm not satisfied. So how do we be able to evaluate our performance, our contributions, and what we have to be grateful for in a way that compares truly the alternative in the way we did with The Wonderful Life and A Christmas Carol tried to set us up. And that leads me to one of the mottos I've had most of my life. And that is that today you try and fail, then tomorrow's another day. But if today you fail to try, tomorrow is another 2 day. Right. And so we can look back and reflect and be grateful both for the successes, the lucky breaks, as well as the setbacks, the challenges and the adversities and the challengers and the people who bit you in the back or stabbed you in the face or stole from you, lied to you, deceived you, and attacked you unfairly. And yes, I've literally been stabbed in the face, had to have a big giant metal rod physically removed from my face from some wackadoodle who did it to me. But okay, like that happened. I get to be grateful that I survived. I get to be grateful that the medical science was there to get me out of that. And I now know I can take a hit and keep on ticking. So, even the most challenging setbacks can really end up becoming setups for our future success. So how do we mine our gratitude in that deeper well versus that shallow comparison of just, is it better than the past? Even if it's worse, maybe it's better than it could have been had we not been getting after it. And then in terms of our goals, let's not just inherit the ones that people dump on us. I mean, they're entitled to their expectations. It's a free country. That's their opinion. But let's set our goals based on our choices and goals that both inspire and challenge us, but don't exhaust and overwhelm us. And so whether you're doing that for your family or doing that for your business, be the powerful agent in that goal setting. And rather than looking to the past performance to predict the future, like, well, last year we did $1 million in revenue. Next year we want to do 1.1 million. Rather than looking at the number of customers or your market share or the throughput or the efficiency or the defect rate or whatever key performance indicator you want to look at, that'll only ever get you incremental results. So our recommended strategy when we're developing objectives and key results for organizations or for our family is, don't just look at the present and the immediate future, but go further beyond and look at that vision, and not a perfect vision, but truly a desired state. The Dickens test would be like, okay, what's the Christmas yet to come? What would it look like if we don't change the way we're doing things? And then how would we like that to be materially different? And let's set that's our long-term goal. So then what's the short-term goal that's going to make progress towards that? Now, there might be things that are outside of our control, but we can say, hey, are we doing the best with what we have from where we are? That's a goal set from a place of power, right? That's a deep well. When we talk about business, we can use examples all the time, but this time of year is when my family, we do our own family reflections and gratitudes and goal setting. Several years ago, we created our own family strategy map with our own mission and our vision. And then we've updated our rallying cry and our thematic goals every couple of years as various themes have changed, from marathon mommies to let's get rhythm, things of that nature, big moves, big changes we've done in our lives. And then we've got these 4 balanced goals that we have that are ongoing strategic goals. We want to be members of a vibrant community. We want to have abundant physical and financial wealth and well-being. We want to have lifelong learning and so on and so forth. So those are evergreen, but within those big goal categories, each year we choose a specific objective and key results for ourselves as individuals. And we write these down on these 3x5 index cards. And it's like, okay, so in the realm of abundant health, what are we working on? In the realm of lifelong learning, what are some new skills or what deeper skills that we want to develop? In the realm of vibrant communities, what relationships do we really want to enhance and invest in and promote, whether it's as a father, as a husband, as a daughter, as a son, as a friend? So we set these goals, we write them out, our own little OKRs, and they're annual goals in our case. And it's not the end, it's not perfect, but we said, hey, if investing in these is worth failing for. Right? These are compelling enough that if we get after them and make progress, even if we don't fully check the box at the end of the year, man, our lives are going to be materially better than they would have been had we not tried. So those are, long-term goals, but then every year, what am I doing incrementally to step me closer into that desirable future. So we take these individual objectives and key results and we put them on these index cards and we put them up in our bathroom mirror. So we're seeing them every single day for a year. And we have these little open circles. They're called Harvey balls, where we kind of sketch out a quarter or a half or 3/4 as we might make progress across the year towards those goals. And then also there's ones that haven't gotten anything in it because we're like, oh, well, haven't put the effort in on that. So no wonder I haven't gotten the results yet. And then when we have dinner, a couple times a week, one of the dinner conversations at our family table is, what's one thing you're grateful for? Now, we often start being a faith-based family with a blessing or grace. And in that blessing, grace, we offer blessings to those that are facing particular adversities in the world or in our networks. So that's a routine part of it. But then we actually go one step further and say, like, hey, what's one thing you're grateful for? What's one thing that, is here that we wouldn't be enjoying or experiencing or benefiting from had you not been here or showed up? And that really anchors us in a much deeper well of gratitude. If you just focus on whether you were successful or not against some expectations that somebody gave you, that's like using a 9-volt battery to try to power a city. That's going to run dry really quick versus an infinite well of like solar power, right? That just can just keep on pumping and provide an unlimited supply of that solar energy, or maybe a fusion reactor, for example. Like, that's going to be a much deeper well. So as you celebrate this season, and whether it's the end of the year when you're listening to this, or it's the middle of the year, this is a moment in your life as a leader where you might be feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're beating yourself up. And yeah, maybe your leader is beating yourself up. Maybe everyone around you thinks you're a clown. Maybe it is that challenge. Maybe you got severe adversaries that are coming down on you, coming after you. Instead of focusing on why it's not working, how it's not fair, think about the things you have to be grateful for. And I'm not just talking about what's good in your life today versus was yesterday, but think back to that It's a Wonderful Life. Think back to that Christmas Carol. In A Wonderful Life, he wasn't realizing the benefits that he had. And in the Christmas Carol, he wasn't realizing the goals that he could have and the impact he could have on the future if he didn't try. And so that's positive and negative contrast and comparison. But in both of those cases, there's an opportunity for you to choose where you place your focus when you determine what you want to be grateful for, and where do you place your focus when you choose to set what your goals are going to be. That can either inflate and empower and enhance your state, or unintentionally put you in a little bit of a leadership prison and deflate you. So many blessings to all of you out there. Many gratitudes for those of you who are fighting the good fight, and continued wishes to helping you achieve all that you dream for in your lives, and celebrating both the successes and the setbacks along the way. Thank you for joining us today on the Unleashing Leaders podcast. Subscribe so you don't miss a moment that could be the key to your next breakthrough. Let's stay connected and contribute together by grabbing that @Unleashing Leaders handle on LinkedIn, YouTube, or your favorite network. This is Lee Scott. Keep learning, loving, and leading. Our future and our communities are counting on us.